Ebert, Siskel, Roper. For as long as films have been made, there have been film critics, highly disciplined tastemakers discerning common craft from true artistic merit. The reviews penned by these remarkable wordsmiths have not only defined the works they critique, but also shape American popular culture as we know it. But there is one name frequently forgotten among the greats, one whose wit, tact, and unconventional tastes continue to shake the world of cinema, frustrating as well as fascinating his followers. This is the story of the self-proclaimed film guru of Chicago, Cale Dapman. Though he would grow to become one of the most controversial and subversive cinematic commentators of all time, the origins of the future Cale Dapman of legend is largely shrouded in mystery. Dapman's first rise to prominence came via the popular social networking app Letterboxd.
Letterboxd is like a cross between Twitter and a film blog. Half the critical thinking, twice the pretentiousness. It's essentially a comment section for cinema. Do with that what you will.
Dapman's first recorded Letterboxd review was for 2019's bovine drama, First Cow.
Even right off the bat, you can see he's working on a whole other level of film critical analysis. We're still learning about it to this day. You read that First Cow review, and it's like you're peering into the mind of a virtuoso of armchair critique. It's like if my dad wrote film reviews.
Pretty much a very dull remake of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, with a cow instead of a brothel.
Already you can see the development of his proto-trademarks. In that first review, lack of patience with atmosphere or subtlety, comparison to possibly superior but otherwise extraneous works. All significant. But it would still be a while before we see any of his lasting motifs.
Over the course of his first months on Letterboxd, Dapman would reveal his mind, persona, and tastes to the world only one or two sentences at a time, often rejecting critical thinking or complexity in favor of blunt, brief ridicule.
Basically a Scorsese film without the threat of violence. I don't like weddings. I don't like grandmothers.
Then, on February 17th, 2021, real unpredictable genius struck.
What a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Thought there would be a lot more music.
That is the flashpoint. That's the whole genesis of the Cale Dapman canon. Those two simple words. Mumbo jumbo. It really is like a declaration of war. It represents a statement to both artist and audience that if a work of art has any more substantial complexity than its predecessors, that work is unintelligible nonsense and should be avoided. It's sort of cinematic anti-intellectualism, a favor of the old rather than the new.
Mumbo meet jumbo. Unpleasant mumbo jumbo. Why does Harry Styles get to keep his accent but Florence Pugh doesn't? Multiverse schmultiverse. Is this what the internet is doing to people's brains? Are we going to keep getting more of this mumbo jumbo? Is there an Adderall shortage?
Though he didn't know it yet, Dapman had started a movement. All he needed now was to find his audience.
Here's how you can identify a college film major. Answers to questions nobody's asked. A Carhartt beanie with at least 2 holes in it. American spirits in his or her back pocket. Or a vape, depending on the day. A rampant superiority complex, and a fanatic obsession with crime films about white men. Cale Dapman was practically destined to find an audience with them.
It's around this point where Dapman really starts to hit his stride and become a much more established, if not universally respected film critic. And this really emboldens him to really solidify his style and make a lot bolder choices.
Well, some of my personal favorites are his reviews where he tries to give advice, kind of, but it's in this really curmudgeonly and short way. For example, in the Florida Project, he said that could use more Willem Dafoe and less children, even though the story is told from the children's perspective. Good Time, he said that lacked tension and needed a new title and score.
His penchant for reduction and non sequitur really starts to shine in that midpoint of his career. If you take a look at his reviews for Whiplash, for Palm Springs, 50-50 Fallen Angels, the list goes on. It's an interesting dialectical hypocrisy from which he writes. Like, he has the time to watch the movie, allegedly, but no care or interest for what the movie's actually saying. I mean, say what you will about the man, but it takes real discipline to maintain that kind of ignorance.
He does try to, at one point, insert humor into his reviews, especially the negative ones. In his reviews for Mank and The Other Side of the Wind, he uses the exact same line. Well, that was no Citizen Kane. This is a terrific jab at his own cinematic fundamentalism. But like the movies themselves, they can't all be winners. And unfortunately, those declining senses of humor and currency were ultimately a harbinger.
Despite Dapman's continued generation of reviews, his later career was marred by bizarre hypocrisy and a lingering taste of the controversial.
Just when Dapman looks like he's about to peak, he has some very interesting and conflicting views. For example, he reviews Fire of Love and says, "Turns out, I'm not that interested in volcanoes." Then, the very next day, he reviews Into the Inferno, another documentary about volcanoes. He also misspells volcanoes in both reviews. So who knows if he actually learned anything.
Dapman reviews Jodorowsky's Doom and laments that if his version had came to fruition, we'd have been spared the two crappy versions. But in his review of 2021's Doom, he's completely dismissive of the exact same story. He also has an affinity for the film Pig. He references it twice in his review of Promising Young Woman as the superior revenge film, which... okay. But then, he turns around and apparently calls Nicolas Cage as a concept a shtick in his review for The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And then, he doubles down and asks what it says about you, the reader, for enjoying it.
Whether due to the increasingly lukewarm reactions to his reviews, a drying up of personal inspiration, or the unbearable weight of his very own allegedly massive talent, Dapman's downward spiral continued on, his views clashing with those of his own readers more and more frequently. Despite his origins as a tastemaker for film students, it now appeared that no one in the world saw things the way Cale Dapman did.
I would say it first started when he had his review for To Five Bloods. He complains about the presence of Chekhov's gun, knife, landmine, submarine, U-boat, artillery fire, Metal Gear, and a Wendy's 4 for $4. Which is a little like complaining that a book is made of paper. But that was all child's play in comparison to the fall he was about to take. See, this was an implosion of a truly iconic figure. Oh, and it just kept collapsing in on itself.
It was really the end of an era, a swan song for an age of internet debate.
At least someone in this damn country can still do satire. All the negativity surrounding this movie is kind of proving his point that you're all a bunch of idiots.
Here you have a public figure whose tastes have deviated so far from popular consensus that he's now resorted to defending his opinions on his own platform. Almost ironic that he chose this film to do it on. It's almost as if, in his last moments of sanity, he became Adam McKay.
Today, the whereabouts of Cale Dapman are unknown. In November of 2022, he was sued for intellectual property theft by none other than Dale Chapman, another film aficionado in the Chicago area. After a short legal battle, the rights to Dapman's reviews were acquired by Chapman, and the enigma that was Cale Dapman faded into myth, forever mysterious, but never forgotten.
Around here, most people would start asking, is this guy serious? And that uncertainty, I think, is the defining legacy of Cale Dapman's film reviews. The idea of whether he has his nose all the way up or all the way up his own ass.
Was Cale Dapman nothing more than a troll? A firebrand with absurdly high and inconsistent standards? Or a true blue visionary? A man who saw the world as no one ever has? The world may never know. He may have inspired a few people. Terrifying, isn't it?